We have somebody here who is going to teach us everything, everything we didn't need to know about screenwriting, everything you were afraid to ask before. Gerald, when Gerald offered to do this workshop, we couldn't pass it up. He just did this workshop at Comic Palooza in the last couple of weeks, and so we're excited that he's going to be doing this for Swamp supporters tonight. So thank you very much. Swamp is a nonprofit art organization, so if you'd ever like to donate in the future, swamp.org. There's a big red donate button on there. So, and one last time, I want to mention thank you to the Media Source. And if anyone needs a water or soda or something, they're over there as well. Other than that, I think I can turn it over to Gerald, and you're going to make us successful screenwriters, right?
That's the plan.
Okay, great. Okay, thank y'all so much. Gerald, you're up.
Oh, yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, my laptop crashed, so I'm having to wing this by phone here. Since all of y'all came all this way just to see me, it's only fair to introduce myself. My name is Gerald Hanks. I'm the founder of Story into Screenplay. Story into Screenplay works with screenwriters at every stage of the screenwriting process. So basically, if you have an idea, you want to turn into a script, I can help you with that. If you've started on a script and don't know where to go with it, I can help you with that. If you've finished a script and you want to see if it's ready for the pros, I can help you with that. And if you have an idea and you don't feel like writing and you just want to pay somebody millions of dollars to write it for you, I can help you with that. No? It's worth a shot. So you may be asking, it's like, well, if this guy's in Houston, why is he not in LA? What makes him so qualified to talk about screenwriting? Well, in 2012, I did my first short film with the 48-hour film contest. And in 2014, I launched my blog, Story into Screenplay, which offers screenwriting advice to various writers and also critiques various films and breaks down their screenwriting processes. And over time, it became one of the top 50 screenwriting blogs on feedspot.com. And in 2015, I had my first screening at Comic Palooza, where they kind of had a similar contest to the 48-hour contest. And that film got screened and won a bunch of awards, mostly for the actors, because the actors made my stuff sound good. And in 2018, I had my first paid screenwriting job, where I worked with a client on a script called Prodigal. The client wrote this short story he wanted to develop into a feature, so over the course of a few months, that I helped him develop that into a feature script. And in March 2020, I became a paid coverage writer for both the Austin Film Festival and for Coverfly. So my day job basically involves reading scripts all day. And in June 2020, March 2020 was Austin, June 2020 was Coverfly. And Coverfly works with a bunch of different screenwriting contests like We Screenplay, Script Lab, Screencraft, a bunch of other different contests for both TV and for features. And in February 2021, the script that I wrote for the client ended up winning the K-Rose Prize and won me a nice chunk of prize money, so I was able to pay off my credit card, so hallelujah. And in October 21, about a week before I was ready to go to the Austin Film Festival for the first time, I ended up signing with a management company called Tobias Literary Agency. It's out of LA, and going all the way back to when I started doing my 48-hour contests, the producer on those contests is my manager now. So he also has his MFA in screenwriting. He's also a playwright, so he knows all the aspects of the screenwriting business. And now he's a manager helping me develop my career and getting my scripts out there. And I just found out about a week ago that one of the clients I'm working with currently placed one of her scripts in the quarterfinals of the Page contest. And she'll find if she makes the semifinals in August. So in terms of contests, in terms of writing, in terms of contests on both sides, both entering and judging, then I'm toot my own horn, but I'm probably one of the most knowledgeable people in town. And like I said, my day job is basically involves reading scripts all day. Most of them are not good. Most of my days are not good. But today my laptop crashed, so that was not good. So this is why I'm doing this low-tech approach here. But tonight is going to be good because I'm going to be working with writers who want to write better scripts. So I'm working with people who want to write better scripts. That way I don't have to read so many bad ones. So it's a win-win. So I guess one of the things I want to know is that since we're here for screenwriting, how many of you actually completed a script, either a pilot or a feature? 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Okay.
Does the one in your head count?
No, just the ones on paper. Okay. Okay. And let's say, if you finish the script, what are your goals with it? Are you looking to enter contests? Are you looking to get funding? Are you looking to get it produced? What are you looking to do with it?
Funding for sure.
Funding? Okay. Anything else? Jason?
Produced, yeah.
Okay.
Finish, I made it, so.
Oh, you already
on
made
to
it?
the next one, I guess.
Okay, on to the next one, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Same here?
Produce it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, and how many of you have ever taken a screenwriting class before? Okay, just the ones that have written it. Okay. Okay. Now, if you look at your handouts, we'll take a look at what I call the vote method. Okay. Well, first of all, we need to cover some basics. First of all, what is the fundamental purpose of storytelling? And there are a few things that a lot of people think storytelling is about when it's really not. And the first thing is the fundamental purpose is not, and I want you to write, to teach a lesson. A lot of people think that's the primary purpose of a story, is to teach somebody a lesson. And another thing the fundamental purpose of a story is not, is to preach a sermon. That, like I said, I read a lot of scripts that are all about messages, they're all about sermons, they're all about moralizing, they're all about trying to convey a moral message to an audience who may or may not be ready to receive it. And the fundamental purpose is not to comment on society. These all can be a purpose of a story, but these are not the main purpose of a story. Now, the fundamental purpose of a story is to provoke an emotional response in your audience. Here's a question. Why do you tell a joke? What do you want to get out of your audience when you tell a joke?
Laugh.
Laugh. How many of y'all write horror? Okay. What do you want to get out of your audience when you write horror?
It depends on the story, but overall, like, I want them to, scare,
You want
grossed out.
You want them to be scared, right? You want to be scared, disgusted, repulsed. And so, how many of y'all into music? How many of y'all play music or okay?
I dabble.
Dabble. Okay. So say if you write a really sweet love song, what do you want to get out of the audience?
Some kind of response. I want them to love it
Okay.
as much as I did. So.
Okay. You want them to feel those love
Yeah.
feelings, right? Or if you play a breakup song, what emotions do you want out of the audience?
I want them to miss my dog too.
And so what do all those have in common? They're all emotional responses. All the stuff that I said that the fundamental purpose of a story is not, those things don't work unless you provoke an emotional response first. Because they're not going to listen to your lesson if you don't hit their emotions first. They're not going to listen to your sermon. They're not going to listen to your moralizing unless you hit their emotions first. And they're not going to listen to your comment on society, no matter how well spoken it is, no matter how logical it is, unless you hit their emotions first. Did everybody get that? Okay. Now to rewind on that, what's the fundamental purpose of a screenplay? Now again, in this case, the purpose is not right down to show your writing skills. This is one thing I can always tell when I read a script from a novelist who's trying to be a screenwriter, is that they're literally trying to overwrite. They try to write it like a novel in screenplay form rather than writing it as a screenplay. How many of you have read screenplays? Okay. So how many of you can tell the difference between when somebody's writing a screenplay and somebody's writing a novel as a screenplay? So in that case, that's the writer trying to show their skills as a writer because they're approaching it as a novelist rather than as a screenwriter. And the fundamental purpose of a screenplay is not, write the words, to direct from the page. Now, I know some of you might be directors or producers in your own right, and you want to put everything in the script. But as a screenwriter, just from the screenwriting perspective, if you were simply to write a spec screenplay, then you want the direction to be as sparse as possible. Because unless you're the director, that's not your job. Your job is to deliver the story and to deliver the visuals. And like I said, I cannot count how many times I've seen scripts that talk about close up here, or tight shot here, or pan here, or cut here. It's like, that's not your job. Your job is to, again, convey the visual and convey the story as sparsely as possible. And for those of you that are into screenwriting and filmmaking, I think you already know this, the fundamental purpose of a screenplay is not to make you rich and famous. That's it. Again, I cannot count how many times I've been approached by a writer and said, "Oh, I've got a great idea for a movie. All you need to do is just write it for me, and we'll sell it for $1 million, and we'll split the money 50-50." How many of you know this is not how that works? It's like if you go to my blog, storyintoscreenplay.com, the first post on there that I made back in January 2014, the title was, "I've got a great idea for a movie." And the first thing I say in there is, "No, you don't." But you haven't even heard it yet. I don't need to. Because your ideas don't matter. And your ideas are not going to make you $1 million. And your ideas, and especially screenplays, are not going to make you famous. So, even the best ones might get you comfortable, but you're not going to be Hollywood rich. You're not going to be stalked by paparazzi. If that's what you're looking for, then you're barking up the wrong tree. Let me throw a couple of names out there for you. There's a couple screenwriters you might have heard of. A couple guys named Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely. Those names ring a bell to anybody? No? Yeah, they wrote a couple of indie movies a couple of years back. You might have heard of them. One is called Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
Definitely indie.
Yeah, definitely these low-budget indie movies. Yeah, that's why we never heard of these guys.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. It's like the goal, like I said, the goal of a screenplay is not to make you rich and famous. The purpose of a screenplay is to provide a blueprint for the film. Like I said, when we talked about people who try to write it as novels versus screenplays, the people who write it as novels think the screenplay is the story. For those of you who are filmmakers, know the screenplay is not the story. The screenplay is the framework for the story. The film is the story. The TV pilot is the story. The screenplay is just a guideline for the story. The screenplay is just your blueprint. The screenplay is your IKEA instructions. Like the screenplay is the piece of paper you get your IKEA furniture, but the film is the actual IKEA furniture that you build. And sometimes the filmmaking might be easier than building IKEA furniture. But when we talk about a story, like what are the fundamental elements of a story? Well, the first one, if the question is who, then the answer is character. And there's a reason I'm going to list them in this order. The first is character. The second is plot. Character is who's it happening to. Plot is what's happening. Where and when it's happening, that's setting. How it's happening, that's structure. And why it's happening is theme. Yeah, how many of you all heard the old joke about what's the 3 most important things in real estate?
Location.
So what are the 3 most important things in a screenplay? What's that? Go to the top of the list.
Character.
He's a client of mine, so he's cheating. He's heard this before. So it's character, and then what was the last one again? Oh yeah, I think it was character. Now, if you know the most important things are character, so what makes up a character? And again, we're going over the things that character is not. Character is not, put down, physical description. Just by itself, physical description does not define a character. How many of y'all have read scripts, especially when they describe female characters, they just say she's tall and blonde and gorgeous, and that's like the sum of her personality.
Sorry.
It's all right.
I had that still.
Okay. Or how many of you have read a script where a guy's like big and tough and muscular, and that's the sum of his personality? So character is not solely physical description. And character is also not personality quirks. Oh, he likes old movies, or she likes, Gucci purses. Just silly little personality quirks like that are not the basis for a character, or not. They can be like decorations, they can be accents to the character, but they don't sum up an entire character. And character is also not lengthy backstory. I said again, this kind of goes back to the novelist's viewpoint in terms of they'll write reams and reams of backstory for these characters, where their family's from, what happened to them when they were kids, all that. That either in a TV pilot or in a feature, you do not have room for all that. A, you don't have room, and B, nobody cares. So character is not lengthy backstory, and character is also, and on the flip side of that, character is also not stereotypes. You'd be surprised how many scripts I read where they'll put all the emphasis on the protagonist, they'll put the lengthy backstory, they'll give all the character motivations to the protagonist, and everybody else is thinner than the paper you hold. Everybody else is stock types. Everybody else is the girlfriend, or the love interest, or the sidekick, or the evil villain. So these things are not character. Now, instead of looking at what a character isn't, look what a character has. A character has desires. They have to desire something. They have to want something. And they have to want it, and especially in the context of the story, they have to want it worse than anything in the world. Now, on the flip side of that, a character also has fears. There's what they want, and there's what they're afraid of. You ever heard the old saying, it's like, you'll run faster when something's chasing you? So that just depends on how you want to how you want to write the character. Yes?
In the movie, should the character always see their fears? Like, they have fear. It should always happen in a movie, right?
Depending on your approach to the story, depends on if they're going after their desire or if they're running away from their fear. Depends on how you're approaching the story. And a character also has to have goals. They have to have something that they're shooting for. It's like almost any movie you look for that the character, either whether it's a comedy, whether it's a drama, whether it's a sci-fi, whether it's horror, that they're going for something. And a character also has choices. And those choices are going to steer the story. And because if a character doesn't have choice, are they really a character, or are they just kind of a passenger in the story? So a character has to have choices that they make to the story. And why are strong characters important is what I call the 3 A's. The first A stands for agents, which pretty sure all of us who are screenwriters want. Because we all want to get an agent, because agent, just write down agents. Strong characters equals sellable scripts. Because if that agent sees a script with a strong character, that's a script that they can market to producers, to investors, to distributors, and to the second A, which is attachments. Or you can say actors, is another A. Attachments / actors. So when you write strong, you can also write strong characters equal big time roles. And the example I use is Matthew McConaughey. How many of you remember Matthew McConaughey's character pre-Dallas Buyers Club? Failure to Launch, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, Ghosts of Girlfriends Past. Now all these, he was the fluffy, silly rom-com guy, and nobody took him seriously. And finally, he got tired of that, and he basically quit for about 2 years, until he ran across this little script called Dallas Buyers Club. And he took less money to do that role than he would have got from the rom-coms. He took less money because that role was so good. And what did he get for it? I'd like to thank the Academy. That's how you get big name actors, is you write big time roles. And the third A is if you get the agents and you get the actors, then you also get the audience. You get the people who are willing to shell out for tickets and parking and popcorn and sodas at the theater. Or you get the people who are willing to buy the subscription to whatever streaming service is on, just so they can see that movie, or just so they can see that TV show, just so they can see that actor in that role. Okay. Now, what is the vote method? How does the vote method tie into all this? I'll let you in on a little secret. As much as I like to claim how this was just originally born out of my brain, I actually got a lot of this from an acting class. And that's one of the things, especially I would advise screenwriters or stage writers to do, is if you haven't taken an acting class, do it. Because, like I said, your goal in this is to write movie star roles. So you need to know what movie stars look for. So if you take an acting class, you know what actors look for when they look at a script. And when you see what they look for, you're better equipped to give it to them. Okay? So the vote method. V is for victory. And that victory has to be number one, specific to that character. It has to be the thing that drives that character. It has to be the thing that only that one character wants to do. Okay? And the second is it has to be clear to the audience. The audience has to know, does he get it or not? Because that's going to dictate how the story goes. It's like, what does he want? I don't know. Does he get it? I don't know. What's the audience going to say to that? Is the movie any good? I don't know. Is the script any good? I don't know. And the third thing is it needs to be powerful enough to drive the story. At that victory, what he wants to accomplish, I'm going to keep saying he, I'm sorry, but that victory that he wants to pursue has to be the most important thing in his life at that point. Again, his drive for that has to be powerful enough to drive the story. Has to be the thing that he wants the most in the world. Okay? And the question behind that is, what does the character, and my handwriting is awful, want? It's a real simple question. How many of you have heard of Aaron Sorkin? How many of you have seen clips of his masterclass or taken his masterclass? I've seen clips of his masterclass, and the big thing that he talks about, and kind of similar to what I'm talking about, is his thing is, don't tell me who the character is, show me what he wants. When you show me what he wants, that'll tell me a lot about who he is. Okay? Now the O in vote is for obstacles. And those obstacles can be, one, physical barriers. Like say he has to get from New York to LA in 24 hours, but he can't fly. And so how's he going to do it? We'll get to that in a minute, but it could be physical distance, or it could be physical barriers. It could be that maybe he can't get on a flight, or maybe the flights are canceled. Maybe there's snow on the ground. Maybe his car doesn't work. The second obstacle can be other characters. If he's trying to get from New York to LA, maybe his wife won't let him, or his boss is going to stop him, or the bad guy is throwing things in his way to where he can't do it. And the third part is that those obstacles have to escalate throughout the story. So if you have obstacle 1 and he overcomes that, is obstacle 2 going to be harder or easier?
Harder.
Harder. Why is it harder? What happens if it's easier?
Get bored.
Not
Right.
escalating.
Right, it's
Yeah.
not escalating. It's like, it's like if he overcomes like the biggest hurdle in the first try, and then he faces the second thing and it's no big deal, then where's the drama in that? So each obstacle has to be harder than the next. You have to escalate throughout the story. And the question is, what stands between the character and the victory? What stands in between him getting to here? What's stopping him? Because nothing's stopping him. It's like, oh, if my victory is just to pick up this bag, it's like the end. This is where your story. This is part of where your story is going to come from. Is those obstacles. So how do you overcome the obstacles? T is for tactics. Now, what do I mean by tactics? Well, like we talked about, since the obstacle is going to keep getting harder, and the first part is, if at first you don't succeed, then what do?
Try again.
Try again. Dust yourself off and try again, right? Think I've heard that somewhere before. And the second is that these tactics lead to difficult choices. Because again, we talked about the obstacles escalating. So the tactics have to escalate, right? And as those tactics escalate, the third part is new tactics equal character growth. You ever heard the old saying? It's like if you want something you've never had before, you got to do something you've never done before. Same thing holds here. So if you want that character to grow, if you want to push him, then he has to. Then as the obstacles escalate, he has to try new things. He has to try things he's never done before. And if he fails, what does he do? Does he quit or does he try again?
Try again.
And try it again. Okay. And the question is, what does the character do to overcome the obstacles? Because like I said, this victory has to be the thing he wants most in the world, right? But he's got these things standing between him and the victory. So what's he going to do about it? And that's your tactics. And the E is for emotion. So there has to be some emotion that's driving him to do this, right? He can't, because like I said, if this victory is the thing that he wants the most in the world, there has to be some emotional need that drives him to want it, right? Now that emotion could be positive. If your first blank is positive, it could be positive. He could want something for himself, or he could want something for somebody else. He could want something for somebody he loves. He could want to say, it's like one of the big examples I use is Rocky. It's like for him, the emotion is he needs to prove that he's worthy of the love of a girl who works in a pet store. That's why he's at the movie. He's going, Adrian. I don't get it. Everybody laughs at that, man. There should not be a dry eye in the house at that, because this is a guy who is just got the living you know what beat out of him for nearly an hour by the heavyweight champion of the world, and his face is turned into hamburger, and he's screaming his lungs out for the woman he loves. I mean, that should draw a tear from a glass eye. Come on.
I thought he couldn't see. That's why he was yelling.
Well, yeah, that too. He's yelling. Well, yeah,
Looking for her.
yeah, he's yelling. Well, I mean, if he was yelling in pain, that would be one thing. But he's yelling because he's literally got so busted up, and he's in so much pain. He's just like he's screaming for the woman he loves, because he knows that's the only thing that's going to help him feel better. And that he knows he's lasted. He knows he stood up, and he knows he proved himself. So he knows that he's worthy of that girl's love. Now that emotion could be positive. It could also be negative. Instead of acting out of love, they could act out of hate. Fear's another thing. Hate's another thing. Instead of wanting to do something for somebody, they could want to do something to somebody, right? And the third part is it has to be a universal drive. Remember in the victory we talked about how that victory has to be specific to the character? This is the specific part. That's what makes the story unique. The emotion is what makes it universal. And that's going to this is what's going to connect that character to the audience. And the question that this answers is, what need does the character have to fulfill? In other words, what's the need that drives them to pursue that? I know a lot of acting classes talk about it as an emotional wound. What's the emotional wound that they need to heal that they think accomplishing this victory is going to do for them? Okay. Now, a lot of writers will ask, well, why do you start with the character instead of the plot? Well, if you know anything about how plot works, plot comes from conflict. So fill that in. Plot comes from conflict. And where does conflict come from?
Character.
Exactly. So when you start with character, you build the conflict. When you build the conflict, you build the plot. Okay? Now you see how vote works in creating a character. How does that create conflict? Now one way you can have is different victories. These two characters you can have two characters who have two clashing victories. And since I prepped this for a comic convention, I'm going to use comic characters. And one of the main ones I use is Batman and the Joker. Batman's victory is he wants to get rid of all crime in Gotham. Joker's victory is he wants to control all the crime in Gotham. He wants to be an agent of chaos. He wants to disrupt Batman's ideas about order. So they each have different victories, which leads to their conflict. You can also have the same victory and different obstacles. Like I just talked about Rocky. If you go back to Rocky IV, you got Rocky versus Drago. They have the same victory. They both want to win the fight. But they have different obstacles, which is each other. But you will never have two characters that are going to fight, especially if it's if only one. They're both fighting. They're both competing. Only one of them can win. So they have the same victory, but they have different obstacles, and those obstacles are typically each other. You can also have characters who have the same victory, but want to employ different tactics. And the example I use here is from the X-Men movies. You got Professor X and you got Magneto. They both have the same victory. They want mutants to be to be safe. They want to have a safe society for mutants. But they have different tactics. Professor X wants to have a cooperation between humans and mutants. And Magneto wants to run over the humans and have mutants take over the world. So they have the same ideal victory, but they have different tactics, and that's what brings them into conflict. You can also have the same victory, and can you guess what the next one's going to be? They have the same victory, and they have different emotions. They have different emotional needs that drive them. And the example I use here is Batman and Superman, because again, they both have the same victory. They want to get rid of crime, but Batman's emotional need comes more out of his emotional wound from losing his parents, and Superman's emotional need comes from his desire to protect people. He needs to show that he can use his power to protect people, and so that's why they tend to butt heads. How many of you read Dark Knight Returns? Frank Miller, Dark Knight Returns. How many of you saw Batman v Superman? Not quite the same, but it's kind of close. Okay. But you can see how you can use the vote for each character, then put them into conflict with each other. You can use these to build the conflict, and that drives your plot. Now, one of the things I always preach is that, like, every major character should have a vote. The protagonist, the antagonist, the supporting characters, the love interest, the comic relief, the sidekick, whoever. Like we talked about before, it's like you don't want to use stereotypes just to fill in your characters. So why does every character need a vote? Like I said, for the protagonist, in the case of the protagonist, it's because the protagonist drives the story. Their pursuit of this victory is going to drive the story. Every time they encounter an obstacle, it's going to drive the story. Every time they use a tactic to overcome that obstacle, it's going to drive the story. Every time they deal with that emotional wound that they need to fulfill to achieve their victory, that drives the story. And for the antagonist, you put down the villain as the hero. How many of you have heard the saying, the villain is the hero in their version of the story? Like I said, it's like I cannot tell you how many times I've read stories where, like I said, the protagonist is all virtuous and the antagonist is just this mustache twirling, tying the girl to the railroad track villain. Who wants to play a villain like that? Like, you know why the Marvel movies get so many good actors to play the villains? Because the villains are usually so well written. Look at Loki, look at Killmonger, look at Scarlet Witch. It's not just because they're popcorn movies, not just because they have gazillion-dollar budgets, and not just because they have great effects. It's because they apply something similar to this to make sure that those characters have depth and meaning and direction to them. Okay? And for the supporting characters, you put down strong support. How many of you have seen a movie where you've seen the supporting character come in and just steal the show? Why? Because that supporting character is actually given something to do. If the supporting character is just in orbit of the protagonist or one of the other characters, then again, you're not giving them anything to do. Like I said, this approach is very actor-centric because, like I said, we're writing these for actors. So you can't just say, oh, I'm going to have a big lead and then I'm going to have a bunch of nobodies in the rest of the cast, because the better you write the roles, the better level of talent you'll attract. So if you can attract somebody in one of the supporting roles, because they give out the best supporting actor and actress too, right? Now, is that Oscar statue any smaller than the best actor or actress? Same size, same award, same everything, right? So you want to build up those roles too. Okay. Now, how do I apply the vote method? Like I said, you can apply it at multiple levels. At the entire story level, whether that's your feature or whether that's your series, you put down big picture. I said you want to take this big picture approach. It's like, this is what this character is going to be like over the course of the entire story. They're going to pursue this victory, they're going to overcome these obstacles, they're going to employ these tactics, and they're going to fulfill this emotion. Okay? And at the act level, then you want to hit all the turning points. How many of you know about the 3-act structure and features? That each of those has a turning, there are even turning points within each act, and that as you go from, say, from the beginning to the end of Act 1, then the start of Act 2 to the midpoint, then the midpoint to the end of Act 2, then the start of Act 3 to the end, and you're going to have turning points along the way. And as they hit each of these turning points, that character is going to change. So that's how you apply the vote method. And within each act, there's also sequences. And at the sequence level, you want to keep it moving. Because through each sequence, again, you've got your direction through that victory. So as you put together each sequence, whether it's a string of dramatic scenes, whether it's a string of action scenes, whether it's a string of slapstick comedy, then you're still going to need to apply this vote method to, like I said, keep the action moving. And even down to the scene level, when we talk about the scene level, you can put down trailer moments. How many of you have watched a movie, decided to watch a movie just based on the trailer?
And it's the only good part.
Sometimes they put the best 2.5 hour movie, they put the best 2 minutes in the trailer. But it got you, didn't you? So that's the point, is that you want to have those trailer moments. And like I said, as you apply the vote to that, even to a specific scene, that each scene is how many of you all know that basically that a scene is a story in and of itself? So when you apply just that scene, what does that character want out of that scene? What's their victory in that scene? What's their obstacles in that scene? What tactics they employ in that scene? And what's the emotion that's driving them in that scene? And that's going to deliver those trailer moments that are going to make that scene more impactful. And all the way down to the line level. And the line level, you write down, make each line count. How many of you have read scripts where the dialogue just rambling and doesn't go anywhere? And, oh, hi, Steve, how are you? Oh, hi, John. What's going on? Oh, not much. Like, where's the tension? Why should I care? Why should I care? So if you can even get it down to the line, that if you can deliver those kind of impactful lines, it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be beautiful. It doesn't have to be verbose or poetic. Some of the best lines can just be that simple, but they have an intent to them. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. May the force be with you. So why does he say that? Why does Ben Kenobi say that right before he's about to die? Right before he knows he's going to face, he tells Luke that just right before he goes to face Vader and he's about to die. Because that might look good on a T-shirt. I have the T-shirt, but it also has an intent. There's an intent behind it. Is that he wants to imbue that tradition to Luke. He's literally like a passing of the torch because he knows he's about to go off to die. Okay. So that's one of the things you want to do with your scripts, is try to make each line count. So when you look at that line, it's like, what's the victory they're trying to accomplish with that line? What's the obstacles keeping them from accomplishing that in that line? The line itself is a tactic. How are they using that line as a tactic to get what they want? And the emotion. What's the emotion that's fueling them to say that line? Okay? Now we get to the good part. Now, how can story into screenplay help me with my writing? I'm glad you asked. First part where I talk about to guide my writing process, you can put down hourly consulting. Kind of cheating here. I have one of my clients here who can tell you all about how hard I am with the hourly consulting part. Like I said, I'm a stern taskmaster, right? But that's one of the things I do is I work with the writers, literally taking them. I can take them either through a general concept or general idea that they have, like I said, or if you have a script that you're developing, if you have, say, a story that you want to turn into a screenplay, if you have a script that you're working on and you want to get it in shape, say for a contest or for production or to send it off to a manager or to a studio, And that's what I'll do is I'll walk you through the script, walk you through which parts need the most work and which parts can do with a little tweak to get it into shape. And the next part under my finished script, you can have a professional evaluation. Like I said, that's literally my day job for basically the last 2 years, is I read scripts and I have to find nice things to say about scripts that suck. But ideally, like since you guys are here, you guys are obviously interested in not having your script suck. So as part of that, I can evaluate it based off of what you're delivering and show you what does work, like I said, in terms of all these. Also, like I said, and use this as the basis for evaluating character, plot, structure, dialogue, concept. Evaluate all those, show you what does work and what needs work. And once you see what works and what you see needs work, then we can go from there and we can possibly move to the hourly consulting to shore up what needs work and get it in shape. And the last part is a script for me is write or rewrite a script for me. So again, like I said, I've dealt with a client who had a short story and I helped him develop the script. I worked with him in literally, like I said, the name of my site is Story into Screenplay. That's literally what I do. I'll help you take your story and translate it into a screenplay. Or again, if you have a script and you don't have the time or the effort to put into reworking it, then we can discuss how to rework that, and I can help you with that process. Okay. Now, the big question is, how can I get a free one-on-one consultation with you? Now, you should be able to follow the steps there. Just text Swamp Vote Workshop to that number, which is this number right here. Just include your name, email address, and when you'd like to schedule your session. And when you schedule a free session, you're also entitled to discounts on script analysis reports and future sessions. Okay. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What's the best script you've ever written or read?
Oh, a couple. There was one really good World War II script about guys in a bomber crew who got shot up. There was another one that was kind of a Peter Pan, basically another Peter Pan take, except this one is Peter Pan is basically a psycho cult leader, and the Tinkerbell's fairy dust, meth. And one of the Lost Boys tries to escape, and he basically escapes to Captain Hook, and Captain Hook, and since Smee died, it's Captain Hook's second in command, Wendy. So they plot to take Peter Pan and his crazy apocalyptic cult down.
Like a spec script then?
Yeah, these are all spec scripts.
Okay.
Yeah, all the stuff I read for Coverfly and Austin and all that are all spec scripts. But yeah, those are the ones that stick out. Like I said, especially with characters, especially like this one character who basically wants to overthrow Peter Pan because Peter Pan is basically a fairy dust addict who's basically runs this crazy doomsday cult. Okay. Any other questions on the vote method or how any of this works? How many of you can see how this can work with your script? Okay. And how many of you want to talk about how to get this to work with your script? Everybody volunteer at once.
I think it's about applying it, right? I mean, looking
Right.
at what you have,
Right.
okay, I see where mine is flawed because it doesn't have enough emotion or
Right.
enough obstacles.
Right.
Definitely compare side by side.
Okay. Okay.
I don't think I could think off the top right exactly how I could apply it. That's the best way I can think of applying it.
Okay. So maybe I've got some questions for you. How many of you, whenever you write a script, what out of those ones we listed, character, plot, structure, theme, all that, how many of you take the approach of character first? Okay. How about plot first? Okay. How about concept first? Okay. How about theme first? Okay. But you see where, when you apply this to your characters, then all the rest of it falls into place. I know this might seem simplistic, but like I said, that I got this from an acting class years ago, and like I said, the reason that it works is because that, like I said, you're writing these for actors. The thing that I always say is, like, whenever you look at a movie poster, what are the first names you see? What are the first names you see across the top? Before you even see the title of the movie, what are the names you see across the top of the poster? The actors. Who goes on the late night talk shows to promote the movie? Is it it's the actors. It's not the writers. I hate to tell you, but nobody's gonna invite you. No, I don't care how good your script is. Nobody's gonna invite you guys to sit on Jimmy Kimmel's couch. You're not gonna bump Matt Damon to sit down on Jimmy Kimmel's couch and talk about the script you wrote. But what you do want is, if you can write a great role, you will have that movie star sitting on that couch raving about, I read this script, I love the role, I called my agent, I need to get this role. It's like, and when I read the script and I got on set and I got the chance to do this role, it was the role of a lifetime and I loved it. And you want them to rave about it. You want to rave about it on those shows. You want to rave about it in interviews. You want to rave about them at the premiere. You want them to rave about it at the award ceremonies. You want them to say, this is the role of a lifetime, this role I've always wanted. And they might not even remember the name of the writer, but they can just say that this script gave that to me. That's what you want to give to them. That's what gets your career started. If you can write those kind of roles for those kind of actors, and that's what's going to get you noticed. That's as kind of almost like a thought exercise. One of the things I'll say is, if you could cast your script, if you could be in control of the casting, who would you cast in those roles? So, but if not to say that you're going to get those actors, but if somehow that you got a chance to talk to that actor, say, I've got this great script, and you want to hand them that script, and you want them to read that script, and you want them to say, I want to do this role. That's the level that you have to be at. Like I said, that's why things like lengthy backstory and stereotypes and all that are, when you're trying to approach those A-listers, that's not going to work. They want something they can sink their teeth into. They want that Oscar bait role. And so that's your job to give it to them.
So the script needs to be descriptive, but also flow well, right? You talked a little.
I would think probably the flow is more important than the description.
Okay.
Because it has to move. Because because a movie is short for moving picture, right? You have to for a moving picture, you have to have two things. You have to have movement, and you have to have picture. So, like I said, when I talk about directing from the page, that also goes the same for, cinematographer. Or you're not the cinematographer, you're not the editor, you're not the set designer. Like I said, I've read scripts where they've spent paragraphs describing an interior of a room. And I'm just like, why? Like, you're not designing this, nobody's gonna care. And by the time I get through like 3 paragraphs of description about a half a page long, then I've lost track of where the character is or what we're doing or what's going on.
Do you have like a rule that you don't want a paragraph to be longer than 4 or 5 lines?
Right, yeah. And white space is your friend. Just from a general formatting perspective, white space is your friend. Don't be afraid to. And kind of the rule of thumb that I would use would be, each line of description should be one shot, because if you're if you have like 3 or 4, typically if you have like 4 or 5 lines of description, then that's usually more than one shot. I know I talked about not directing from the page, but that's a way you can kind of sneak around it. Is that just use whatever specific image that you want to convey, use that in each separate description block. And the same for dialogue. Like you talk about, dialogue needs to have intent. Make each line count. That's another reason why I talked that. Another thing, when I'll see like long speeches like this, if you ever read a screenplay, you know the dialogue is only about that wide. But you'll see this column that's that long and that wide. And all I need to do is just look at a visual. I don't even need to read what's in it. I just know there's going to be a slog. So that's why I say make each line count. And when we talk about conflict, we talk about the vote at the scene level. That's when I talk at the scene level and at the line level, that each line should have meaning. That I don't know if you've heard the analogy that dialogue should be like a tennis match. It should be back and forth. That you don't see somebody setting up for a tennis shot that takes a half an hour. It's like, but it should be that back and forth. It should be that tense, and it should be like a big volley in a tennis match. Because you know that both of those, again, if looking at a tennis match, what's each player's victory? In that sequence, that their victory is to get that point, and their obstacles are each other and the net. Right? So their tactics are they'll change up their shots. They'll hard serve. They'll try to ace the serve. Or they'll try to play along the baseline. Or they'll try angle shots. Or they'll try lobs. Or they'll try different shots. Right? And their emotion is that they need to win this. They need to win this point so they can win the game. So they can win the match. So they can win the tournament. And that's why you should make each line move toward. Each line is either going to push them toward that victory or block the other person from getting theirs. So again, it's like offense and defense. When I talk about make each line count, make each scene count, that line should be you're either move from tennis to football, that when you have your character talking, they're either playing offense or defense. They're either trying to advance their goal or they're trying to protect themselves from the other person getting over on them. And so that's where subtext comes in. It's like the analogy I use is like if you've ever seen, be heteronormative here, but you ever seen like a little boy and a little girl sitting together, it's like they're maybe like kindergarten age, and the little girl says, "Do you like me?" What does the little boy usually say? No. But does the audience know? He says no, but what does the audience know watching this? He does. Because if he said yes, then the end, right? But if he says no, then again, all he has to do is say one word, and there's your drama right there. In that case, his victory is he doesn't want to admit that he likes her. Her victory is he wants to get him to admit that he likes her, but his victory is he doesn't want to admit it. And see, just simple things like that, simple character moments like that can create all the drama and the tension and drawing the audience, all that you need.
I guess a formatting or a structure question, like introducing new characters.
Mm-hmm.
Is it always do you have to capitalize the full name,
Yeah.
age, and then
Yeah.
a brief description?
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
But not, just
You just have to capitalize it just the first time.
the first time.
Yeah. And obviously in the dialogue tags as you're giving their dialogue.
Right, and then sub-characters probably don't need to do that.
No, every character you introduce needs to be that way, but because that's one of the things that the line producers people are going to look at when they're casting. So it's like that's the first thing they're going to look at. It's like, okay, here's the character's name, here's their age, race, description, whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just going to pull that for the casting notices.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. That's like I said, the script is not the story. The script is the blueprint for the story, and that's part of the blueprint is to outline the casting, outline for the casting. I would say instead of doing like man 1, 2, and 3, I would say like tall man, skinny man, fat man, whatever. Just give them some type of distinctive.
But
some
that's
type of
the character name.
If you're only going to use them for the one scene, yeah, I would say if you're going to use them for more than one scene, then they're obviously going to make an impact, especially for features.
Okay.
That if you're just going to use them as like extra or not extras, but and another thing I would do is that I would minimize the number of characters that you give lines to, because I think Alfred can speak to this. Like anytime that you give a character lines, that means they have to get paid. They get paid more. They get paid more if they have actual speaking parts than that they don't, right? So the fewer characters you can give speaking parts, the lower the budget and the more appealing it'll be for producers and investors. So don't make a character. So it's kind of like the whole, like one of the tropes that really makes me cringe is the whole the two characters sit in the restaurant and the waiter comes over or the waitress comes over and it's like, can I get your order and what do you have? And it's like,
Who's got paid?
yeah, they got paid. and it just and you treat every line like it's costing you money. That's what again, another thing. When I talk about make each line count, because each line costs the producers money.
I would say that's for like big budget, like
That's for any budget.
real movies.
That's for any budget.
Commercials, anything.
Yeah.
But I would say you could argue that you want to give, like, if it's a low budget, you want to give lines to as many people as possible to include.
If you're not paying them, you can get. You're not paying them, you can do what you want.
I mean, with
You're
the
not paying
small
them.
budgets, they may be paying you to be in the film.
Well,
I'm
if that's the way you
low budget.
Yeah.
These
Well,
are-
if they want to pay for the privilege, then yeah.
well,
but
I've
I'm
seen it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I guess I'm talking about like, I guess, other like maybe higher scale than what you're talking about. But yeah, if they want to pay for the privilege and have a line, then that's up to whoever. But obviously for like SAG-AFTRA actors, they got to get paid. If you're just gonna have a bunch of extras milling around, that's like,
Priority extras.
what's that?
Priority extras, where they get like a scene. They don't say anything, but they still get paid as well.
If they're featured, then yeah.
That's a feature.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's if there's just a bunch of people in a crowd milling around, then you can just like give them coffee and donuts.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's more like just, like I said, that's one of the tropes that just drives me up the wall is the whole talking in a diner, the waitress saying just like, and like that's another thing I talk about, making each line count. So if you're gonna have a conversation like that, instead of having like in a diner in a restaurant or whatever, have it in like the worst possible place. If you're gonna try to have, if that conversation say between a married couple or whatever, try to have that. If they're gonna have an awkward conversation, have it in the most awkward place possible. They can talk about how bad their sex life is at a funeral.
I love that. More
You
than
see?
I should.
You see? It's like, oh my! I can see the light bulb going off.
Yeah.
I just saw the.
Little bit.
That's not the lights on. Just saw the light bulb going right up over your head.
You can neither confirm
I
or
know.
deny.
We're talking about sex life at a funeral. Yeah.
I actually might just have the perfect short film for that too. One of my film school professors just gave it to me earlier today, and I've been mulling it over in my head. And then you mentioned that, I was like, oh, this is perfect for that. So yeah.
Nah, that's right. I just see the light bulb going
Yep.
off.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Alfred. You had a question?
Well, I was. I'm a big fan of the 90-minute movie.
Mm-hmm.
Some movies are too long, in my opinion, lately. Do you advise your clients or anything to shoot for a particular length if it's too long, or?
I know that whenever I see a script that's over 120 pages, I know it's going to be a slog.
Yeah.
So I know the sweet spot is usually in the 90 to 120 range. I would say 100 to 110 is the sweet spot, depending on your genre. If it's say comedy or horror, then usually the shorter the better. Usually in the 90 to 100 range. For like fantasy or sci-fi or superheroes, where you have to like establish the origin story and build the world and all that, you need a little bit more room. So probably in the 110 to 120 range. In just a standard drama, I would say, like I said, 100 to 110 is probably the sweet spot. If it's a little shorter, that's fine. Like I said, ideally the shorter the better. And like we talked about, make each line count, make each scene count, make everything count. Because when you do that, you'll have a shorter page count overall, and you won't sacrifice stories. Matter of fact, the story will be that much denser, and the story will move faster.
I just rented a friend's low budget creature feature on Amazon Prime, and the movie's 73 minutes, and it has like 6 minutes of credits
Nah.
on the end. It was pretty short.
Yeah, not quite feature length. I know, like the old school rule was features usually need to be at least 90 pages. Maybe that's a little bit less so now because of the streamers, and you have more room. You have more room for smaller films, because obviously with theatrical, then you need like a specific length of time just to make it worth the theater's time. Yes, sir.
What is one of the most common formatting errors you tend to come across?
I don't know if it's so much call it an error or just kind of annoyance. It's like, especially like bold and italics and changing the font size and all that. Courier 12, keep it plain, keep it simple. And especially like people try to get real cute with it. And it's like again, it almost comes from like the novelist school of thought in that they think they need to embellish the text to make it worth reading.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, the screenplay is not the story. The screenplay is the framework for the story, because nobody's going to read all that. And another thing that drives me nuts is the beat, putting beat in the middle of every line of dialogue. If I see beat one more time, I'm going to beat somebody upside the head. You think I'm kidding? I swear, there's one script I saw like at least 5 or 6 of those on a page. So I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me. And again, that's another example of directing from the page, because if you put it in the right context, and that director and that actor is going to know when to put a pause in. And like I said before about the long speeches, all you need to do is just like put a little action in between there. Just say they walk from one side of the room to the other, they pick up a glass, they step up to whoever they're talking to, or they step up, they step away, they pick up something, they put it down. It's like give them something, especially like give them something to do with their hands. Want to get it, like I said, this is a moving picture. Because if you have somebody standing here and talking for 20 minutes, or you see these long lines of dialogue on a page. Like I said, 1 minute equals 1 page, right? So when you see half a page, you see somebody literally standing there and talking and doing nothing for 30 seconds. I'm just like, is he done yet? It's like you got to get, again, this is moving picture. You're writing a moving picture, whether it's film, whether it's TV. You're writing a moving picture. Again, like I said, one of the best examples I've seen is if you can find it. I know it's on YouTube. There's what they call script to screen. There's a channel called Script to Screen, and one of the best ones I found is for. How many of y'all seen the Pixar movie Up? The opening scene that tells their whole love story from when they were kids to when she passes away, and they said there's almost for most of it there's no dialogue. There's not a single line of dialogue, but you get the story, right? Aim for that. Because like I said, dialogue, just think of it that way. Dialogue costs money. If you can tell it through action, you can tell it through facials, if you can tell it through movement, if you can tell it through as little dialogue as possible. Because like I said, just remember each line of dialogue costs money.
So more of a show, don't tell kind of
Absolutely. Absolutely. And especially now, it's like people talk about that with novels, and people's like, well, how am I supposed to show it if I'm not telling it, because it's not just on the page? In film, it's different. That's all you're doing is showing. That's your whole point, is showing.
So you get paid to remove dialogue.
God, I wish I did. It's like, anybody got a chainsaw I could use? Because man, it's like there's, like I said, when I see those big chunks of dialogue, I like, I'm just like, please, no.
Any last questions? We got to wrap it up here, but this has been insightful and things that people, for writers, it's things they need to start thinking about. I mean, yeah, with your script. So thank you so much, everyone. Gerald Hanks, let's go on.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank y'all for coming out to the Swamp Workshop. Please follow Swamp on social media and stay in touch. And that's it. See you next time, I hope. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred.
And thank you, Houston Media Source. Appreciate it. Thank you.